button. So for anyone who ended up hearing that, that's Tommy Scoops on the other side of the mic right now. He's ready to go. Ready to rock. Tom, we got a big Thursday show coming up right here. We got a lot of U.S. Open Cup to talk about, which I'm stoked about. We've got a lot of CCC stuff, and we have, of course, 3 to the dome to God, Carmelo Anthony put into the Hall of Fame. What a 24 hours it has been for soccer-wise. I appreciate, on top of everything, when you talk about elite performances, right? Like being up for the moment, the fact that Carmelo Anthony's induction to Hall of Fame was a potential wedge moment for Matt Doyle to try and make us feel bad about our fandom. That was Michael Jordan flu game right there.
And neither of us took the bait. So in our group chat, the Melo Hall of Fame news comes out, and because Doyle knows that somebody's going to be happy, he wanted to find a way to make somebody unhappy immediately. And he goes, he sent in like a tweet of like, the Knicks can ruin anybody.
Someone with 6 followers from the deep internet, and you're like, who is this person?
Yeah, and I figured he was just gonna go anti-Melo, and I was just like, I'm not gonna do this today. Like, what's the point? Like, nice try. You're only doing this to try to bother me or bother us. But so instead, I think he knew that, so he tried to pivot and just make it a Knicks thing and see if he could get both of us to either argue with each other or argue about the Knicks. And I was like, dude, Melo first ballot Hall of Famer, get out of here. You can't tell me anything.
I was in the building, game 2 after Hurricane Sandy, when he saved a ball from going out from an out of bounds, ran back and hit a 3. That's dedication. Melo cares more than you do. That's what we do.
Just a winner, bro.
He's a winner, born winner, who never won anything except for obviously 3 gold medals and an NCAA championship, which I at the time was required to be a fan as a kid in the tri-state area. I was told on all the taxi cab signs that Syracuse was my team because they were New York's team, and I didn't know better enough at the time. So I was I think it was Hakeem Warwick and Carmelo Anthony fan for that championship. So go Orange, go Melo. Big show, as I said. A lot for us to talk about. I will say for most people who are about to listen, think about 60% of our pre-meeting was just us naming people around the soccer sphere and saying, that's a dude. That guy's a dude.
Yeah.
So,
you're going to get a lot of that today.
That's the show you're about to get. Between CONCACAF and US Open Cup happening simultaneously, it was the chaos of chaos that could occur all across the entire sport. I woke up this morning. I opened up my computer to start doing the rundown and get to some work. I had 4 YouTube streams of US Open Cup games that I didn't know were still open running in the background, and they all just restarted themselves at the same time with full audio, and it was definitely an experience because that's what it was. I had like 3 screens going yesterday, and I still wasn't watching half of what I wanted to watch. It was a wild one, but it's been fun.
I totally agree. What a night that was last night with all the Open Cup action and the night before and Champions Cup to end the night there. There was just a whole lot going on. I think O'Shea Nation did all of the games yesterday, like all of them. He started in Chattanooga, found himself in Vancouver, and then was, while finishing the Vancouver game, was doing Miami LAFC. You cannot convince me otherwise.
That's my guy. So watch out when you're talking nation. Watch out because that's one of my guys. He is legendary CONCACAF referee. He's like the only one they allow to referee basically any team involved with a Mexican, American, or Canadian side. Hence, we see him 5 million times whenever there's a CONCACAF competition. We have some MLS talk coming up. You've got a couple transfer scoops out there. If you've missed it somehow over the course of this week, we've already discussed in length Peter Vermees being let go from Sporting Kansas City in the future for SKC. After that, we did that. I did a little on Monday. We talked about it heavily on Tuesday. We also talked about RSL, Utah Royals, and Real Monarchs' potential sale from the Blitzer Group to the Miller family. I think it's Box to Box MLS in our Discord, who followed up with a ton of research and said that they believe, a lot of people believe the driving force behind some of this is that the Miller family is working to bring an MLB team into downtown Salt Lake City, and inside the parcel of land that they would be awarded for this, there would be space for a new soccer stadium. That is some of the push of why you want to go out and bring the Utah soccer teams into this. I complained about this with Jordan Angeli on yesterday's show, which you should go listen to if you haven't yet. We did all your NWSL breakdown. We talked U.S. women's national team, how Tierna Davidson's injury affects the center back pool, and everything else you should expect to see against Brazil. the fact that it's Real Salt Lake and Utah Royals, so it's not the same geography, it's not the same name, is such chaos to try and describe. So they needed an overarching name of like a Utah Soccer Holdings Corporation Inc. of capitalism or something like that.
You said it all. You covered it there. I didn't think that we were going to get into the etymology of this, of the Utah Royals and Real Salt Lake, but here we are, and I'm happy for it.
Yeah. So that you can, if you want any of that coverage, go back and listen to that. We've got some big stuff coming up next week as well. We're going to do an interview with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. It is their 50th season of soccer. They have their home opener finally coming up because of the hurricane last year, got delayed and all that stuff. So we're going to do an interview there for that coverage. We'll have more U.S. Open Cup, more CONCACAF Champions Cup, and everything else in between. The U.S. Open Cup draw should be occurring live in the middle of this show. So as we get there, if it happens and we understand what's going on, I will say it. If not, it'll be like when I did the Club World Cup thing and didn't understand Alo Valence's complaints and just talked out of the side of my mouth and had everyone correct me, especially in the live chat. So we appreciate everyone in the live chat already. Utah Monarchs name for the Major League Baseball team. That's a solid shout. Pull that Real Monarchs energy in, as well as some Negro League Baseball history. So a lot of cool stuff going on in that. Let's start with CONCACAF. It felt good. Man, it felt good to be back in the warm embrace of getting CONCACAF all over again. Vancouver Whitecaps, as I said, bizarre 6:30 local start time. Not a lot of fans in the building right at the beginning. Whitecaps come out on fire. Electric from Jesper Sorensen's Whitecaps. It's Sorensen ball all over again. We've become used to it. The midfield three of Ralph Priso, Sebastian Berhalter, and JC Nagando.
Dominant.
Is elite. It's elite. This is what the game is built on, Tom. We all saw this coming. Everyone knew it. It's why everyone was high on their stock. Their Ralph Priso stock is through the roof, and it's all delivering right now.
Yeah, they were like Pumas. That looks like what normally Liga MX teams do to MLS teams at this stage of the tournament, where they're just dominant, couldn't get close, like the possession sequences, and then they'd lose the ball and counter-press really quickly. Pumas, again, I know that they're not the best Liga MX team right now, but they're still a solid team, a big team with history and stuff. The Vancouver Whitecaps were playing them off the pitch. Disappointed probably to get to halftime without scoring. They get the goal on the corner kick. Brian White, just a classic New Jersey Mario Gomez finish. And I dared to dream. I dared to believe and hope that nothing bad would happen. These Vancouver Whitecaps are different. This is going to be different. It's Pumas. It's not Monterrey. It's not Tigres, Club America. But an old friend, Coco Kerskia, came up with the equalizer late. I know that I shouldn't have hope, realistically, looking at the history of this competition and how many times we think that, oh, this looks good, but inevitably it ends with a loss or again, a Coco Kersky 87-minute equalizer. I still feel really good about the Whitecaps going to Mexico.
Yes. I think there's nothing you walk away from this game with saying that the Whitecaps can't get a result. And having conceded the away goal sucks. Obviously 0-0 would be a train wreck. Otherwise, any result, you're going through to extra time or you're going through. And there's nothing that we've seen from Vancouver so far in this competition that makes you feel like that's impossible. So I think that's completely fair. Coco was very clearly going to be the one to score. He looked like the best player on the field. He is clearly the best player on this Pumas team. And that's frustrating in its own side because you're like, well, if MLS spent more money, Coco just wouldn't be on this team. Vancouver wins this game, and now they're probably going to move on to the next round. But the pure confidence that this Vancouver team plays with and what we already saw in the previous round, like that's not going to go away. And so I have the belief they're going to go to Pumas. They're going to try and play through pressure. They're going to try and play higher up the field, which is a massive problem for MLS teams when they go away to Mexico because they sit too deep. Any mistake leads to a goal. And it feels like they have enough finishing quality across the team to be able to get goals, to be able to bring Jaden Nelson. And I've liked what I've seen from Sabi so far. Emmanuel Sabi brought in as like one of these sort of flyer additions, been in Europe for a while, has dealt with injuries, was rumored, on the edge of the national team when he was healthy, very rarely He's looked good when he's come off the bench. So you have the ability to bring him and Nelson into the game off the bench because you have created this depth that you've been able to tap into. Ocampo continues to be dominant down the right side. Vite looked awesome once again, dropping in to play through balls into the channels. Obviously, Daniel Rios is an elite CONCACAF Champions League striker, as I have said over and over again. I think your confidence is fair. It will obviously blow up in our faces the more confident we feel and the better it gets, as it literally just did yesterday. But I'm ready to get hurt again. I'm here. I'm out on the market, ready to get hurt.
The only thing that I have to push back on everything, your analysis and everything brought up, when you said Kokokerski was the best player on the field because he looks like that, no. Sebastian Berhalter was the best player on the field.
I'm talking for the C team. I'm talking he was the best one looking for a cup set on that Pumas team. Sebastian Berhalter balls out.
Legitimately a very good player.
Yeah.
And it's a bonus and like such a great value of his set piece delivery. Like, again, it sounds like I'm starting this as a bit to just say Greg Berhalter's son, but like Sebastian Berhalter is legitimately a good MLS player, a starting caliber central midfielder. The Whitecaps, I don't even remember how they signed him. I forget if he came through, like, whatever it was.
They
like the whole thing was like
loan originally.
From where?
He came on loan from Austin. No, he was sent to Austin on loan probably.
Whatever it was, like you take away the name.
So he went from Columbus to Austin on loan, and then he came to Vancouver for 50,000 allocation money, which with a potential 50,000 in conditions met.
Look, like take away the name. Like this is just an excellent scouting and development that the Whitecaps showed by identifying Berhalter, saying like, oh, we think that this guy's a legit MLS player. Get him for next to nothing. He didn't work at a couple, or like he didn't break through at a couple of places. And again, now he's legitimately a starter. And like JC Nagando, somebody from the draft. Tate Johnson, somebody from the draft. Tate Johnson was a guy who, I don't do a ton of draft stuff just because of the nature of where the league is right now. But a few of the people I talk to, I'll be like, hey, like who are some of the guys you like that know better than me? And the consensus was of the people I talk to and trust, hey, Tate Johnson, I think he has a potential to be a legitimate MLS player. Like, he's not going to play at all this year. He's going to be with the second team. He's going to need minutes, but like, we really think that he has potential. And for him to be giving these minutes already is so very impressive. And again, like, you take a step back and you just look at this lineup. You said the midfield trio. Ocampo has been very good for this team. Tristan Blackman was one of the guys who, like, I think we've liked for a long time, but it was hey, he's a really specific role. It's that right-sided center back or left-sided center back in a back three. He's not quite a fullback, but he's not quite a center back in a back two. Well, that was wrong too, because he's playing as a center back in a back two, right? Like, there's just up and down the field of both scouting and development successes that this team has had, and that's where they are right now. And you kind of like look at the team of like all the rotation we've done. Like if they were losing these games, we would be criticizing the manager of like, hey man, like put your best 11 out there.
Yeah.
And they're still getting results in MLS play and in Champions League. It's just, you can't say enough good things.
It's not even, I think if they were struggling, we would have more so than just on Jesper Sorensen. It would be on the front office because we would have said there's not enough talent to compete across all these competitions. And like, that's the part that I think is most shocking, is that they've been able to build in this depth. I think there's a clear acknowledgement of what they're looking for. A lot of the players you named are really high level possession players. And I think you look at a Sebastian Berhalter and it was like star in the Columbus Academy. When he went to Austin on loan, it made sense. Obviously Josh Wolf knows him, but also like Josh Wolf's system made sense to fit Berhalter in, because the fear was he couldn't cover enough ground to play in an open enough game. And so you needed to play in a setup that the possession runs through his feet. Now he's in Vancouver in a spot where that fits. Tate Johnson played, Nick Murray will kill me if I don't say this, so played with the Tampa Bay Rowdies as a academy player, played a ton of first team minutes before he went to college. And Vancouver, they are not always the furthest along when it comes to academy development. So they value things like that, which is like, who are players that can supplement our academy that we think can be pro players out of this group, so that we don't need to go back in. So they're not always looking for like, who's the best number 9, who's the best number 10, who's the best center back. It's like, who do we think has the most pro potential here to just give us any minutes to supplement what we're building as well? And then they make the moves for the Ali Ahmeds of the world, which they've been able to hit on. And Ralph Priso, I mean, I'd give it up. Like for Robin Fraser,
even for you to give up, like that is
Robin Fraser traded for him because he knew him from Toronto. That was his next chance. That was his last chance. And it didn't work out. It didn't work out for him on a Colorado team that was not really putting up high-level results, and he still couldn't get on the field. So to then go to Vancouver and be able to resuscitate his career here is absolutely incredible. And to do it, and again, I think a player who fits the system, high-level possession player, comfortable under pressure on the ball, maybe not always making the best decisions when the field is opened up. Vancouver is able to mitigate that with the way they play.
Yeah, and so the way they play, that's where I wanted to go from here, because I didn't know exactly what to expect from Jesper Sorensen coming to this team. And hey, are they going to play similarly to what Vanni Sartini did? Like, they did make the playoffs. They were good. We wanted them to be better. But hey, like, for me, I didn't have a great take on, like, all right, this is how they get there. Like, this is my stance. And I was like, I think that they should be playing more high energy, be playing in transition a little bit more. But would that totally work? I don't know. Here are some, like, the biggest changes year over year. So last year, they had 47% possession. Now that's up to, like, 56%. I know in MLS, it doesn't count as CONCACAF Champions Cup games. Like, it's early. These things can change. But they are going to be a possession-based team. Their field tilt is fourth in MLS this year. Long pass share is among the lowest. They've taken the most shots in MLS play per game. And surprisingly, the, like, direct attacks and attack speed are middling to, like, the bottom half. So that's what they're doing now. Oh, and the bigger one, passes per defensive action. That is my favorite metric to just see how active a team is, not just in pressing. You could set a mid-block and then still be, like, really hard to defend against. So they're fifth there, and I really, really like that, because last year they were second to last. The only team that allowed more passes before defensive action was Charlotte FC and Montreal and Nashville, and those were the company they were keeping. And this year they bumped that up significantly. Again, the possession is up essentially 10 points. The field tilt is way up as well. I'm pulling it up from right now. Last year, they were 21st in field tilt. Yeah. This year, they're fourth, right? And the numbers are going to change.
So far, small sample size. While
exactly.
Still playing CONCACAF Champions Cup in between those games.
And, like, this is, like, again, whether they're fourth or second or eighth, right? Like, these are, like, the stylistic differences.
Be top half.
And so we've seen their identity now. It's a possession-based team that plays the ball short, that wants to defend more actively and quicker and counter-press rather than dropping off and trying to frustrate teams that way. So I think that everything that he's done has been really positive. And, again, the best part about this is how quickly it's taken shape.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't happen this quickly, let alone for a team that is playing, midweek and having all the games that they have and all the rotation that they have to do and missing some of their key players. But, like, particularly Ryan Gault. It's
Anthony Hudson called CONCACAF Champions League like a weird preseason thing that threw off their year, and Vancouver are weaponizing it to be even better in MLS and continue to make this run. And they have, we've said it, they have the potential to go to the final here. Like, that is realistic. They looked good enough in this game. The result was fine enough for them to go to Pumas and get a result. And then LAFC and Inter Miami, they should not be scared of those teams. This is also another example of me saying that 80% of MLS teams are cowards and should play this way and should try and play this way. Let me ask you this, because we've got a Ernst Tanner quote coming up later in the show.
I can't wait.
Who's having a worse month? Jim Curtin or Vanni Sartini?
Vanni.
Yeah.
Neither. I mean, actually, I resent I resent the premise, but yeah, probably that. Yeah, because
not a great
there really wasn't any changes in instead, like. You lost Stuart Armstrong. Ownership is trying to sell.
And Ryan Gault got hurt. So those are the three big changes that have happened.
And the team's just much better.
Yeah, they're absolutely incredible. And, like, they played this dog shit game this weekend in Toronto in terrible weather going into Champions League.
I've purged that from my memory already.
But, like, even that doesn't even change a ton of that statistical stuff of, like, oh yeah, no, that drops them completely out of all this. That's how good they've been all season. Efrain Juarez, former Vancouver Whitecaps player, manager for Vancouver. Do you know the story about him in Colombia last year?
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't even know. I guess it doesn't matter. It's the Colombian league. He was banned from the sidelines by the Colombian league for like a year or something for what they said was inciting a riot from the fans. Then it like went through all these processes of like, well, actually this stadium's municipal owned, so they don't have the right to ban him, and this one's league owned and club owned and whatever. Now he's the manager of Pumas, and he was very active on the sideline throughout this game.
Good performance.
It was a strong sideline performance for him.
There's an alternate scenario where he's a manager in MLS right now, and like I do
100%.
think his future he ends up as a manager in MLS. I know that that's something that he wants to do, and he was an assistant, I believe, at NYCFC, if I remember off the top of my head. Regardless, this is a guy who I think we're going to see in MLS one day, and him ending up here as Pumas. It's a big job, and it was good to see him on the sideline. Just a nice familiar face.
He was NYCFC's assistant to Ronnie Dyla, for anyone who doesn't already know that. So he played in MLS to finish his career, and then he ended up as an assistant. He went and played in Scandinavia, and I think that was the connection to Ronnie Dyla right after he played in Vancouver. I think he played at Vålerenga to close his career, and obviously Celtic player, World Cup player, all of that type of stuff. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty good expectation, and not a bad game to show for them. Vancouver got their goal off the scrappy corner kick play. Jay Nelson getting involved, then trying to get the red card drawn, trying to go full CONCACAF on it. Obviously, Richie Loran needs to give him a little bit of direction still, but that's why Richie's the GOAT, and everyone else is just trying to catch up. It was so much fun to watch this game. As I said, opening 15 minutes on, Vancouver pushed the game. It was electric. I cannot wait to see the second leg for them. It wasn't the only good game, though. The LAFC Inter Miami game was like must-watch stuff.
Yeah, man.
To close out the night. LAFC ends up winning 1-0. There's some controversy as well, but this was one of those games, and there are a few of them that I have in my memory bank of MLS games where you're like, this is higher level stuff, and it's not something that's won or lost because of weak links. It's because of strengths, and it's what we've waited for because of the way these teams match up, and it fully delivered in this first game because, I don't know, Steph Curry was in the building or something like that.
Yeah, so like I was talking to somebody at LAFC before the game, and they felt, quite like confident just of like, hey, we know when we play our best, we're really, really good, and particularly stylistically, they match up with Miami. Miami wants to have the ball and beat you with possession. LAFC are content. They're happy to let you have the ball, and then we're going to try to kill you in transition. So Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, they're not exactly pressing monsters at this stage of their careers. So the idea is if they're so high up the field, and then you're defending all of that space essentially with eight outfield players, that LAFC could find joy if they played well. But even again, like people at the club understand, like, hey man, if this is one of those days where Messi just plays a blinder, just has a masterclass, then like we can do everything we want. And like you said, got to your point of strengths coming through. Like, hey, there's nothing we can do. But it played out as kind of LAFC would hope for in the most realistic scenario. 1-0. They are outpossessed 60-40, as they would have wanted to be. They outshoot Miami. They outtouch Miami in the penalty areas, which I think is a more telling stat than just shots. And that's how it played out during the game. This was how LAFC wanted to play. This is how Miami wanted to play. LAFC took their chance. We'll get into the controversy in a second. And also not adequate goalkeeping on that. That shouldn't be a goal. Yeah. But LAFC, I think, were the correct winner based on how they played on this night.
Yeah, most of the game was played in the middle third, and so there was not a ton of big chances both ways. Even the goal doesn't go down as a big chance because of where it's definitely not and the way it's hit. And I think for LAFC, like you said, like there were so many moments where they had so many bodies around Messi, and there's a lot of athleticism in this LAFC team, and so you're able to like take a risk and still recover when there's help. And so you see moments where an Aaron Long or a Tillman or a Hollingshead is like chasing and able to chase and eventually clean plays up. But like if Messi's that at half set, better or like cleaner in a cutback or a curled shot or a pass or whatever, it opens you up and there's nothing you can do about it. I thought Segovia struggled as much as we've seen him struggle. I think right now he is in my starting 11 for Inter Miami. I think he's better than Allende, and we haven't seen some of these other young pieces that have now come over. So I would say he is, in my mind, that third attacking player. I just didn't think it was his best game. Like I think he struggled to come inside and find enough space where he's really dangerous to hit those cut balls through the channels, especially for Suarez's runs. And so you saw, I think also for Inter Miami, the acknowledgement of the transition. And so maybe a little bit less from the fullbacks to push into play and a little bit less willingness to completely isolate their center backs. And so that took a little bit of the danger away of the possession. I would say it's still 50-50 going into the second leg. Like LAFC did the job. They didn't concede at home, but Inter Miami are not going to be worried about being down a goal because of the capability they have offensively. Let's get into some of the big moments of this game.
Before we do that, I don't know if you've looked at any of your messages. Weeby is currently live texting us updates from our last show, giving us point by point his reactions to what we're saying about Kansas City and stuff. So, Weeby, when you hear this, maybe Sunday, thank you. We'll get back to this soon. But the biggest controversy from this game is the Nathan Ordaz situation. I don't know how in any world with VAR he did not get sent off. I don't understand how you go to the monitor and watch somebody as he kicks him too, but open palm shoved I can't call it a punch. I can't quite call it a slap. I hate that you're positioning me as the dork of well, actually look at the rules. That's a fucking red card, and it's not close.
He's turning in a natural motion. He has
Off
the right
the
to his
ball.
running space. Falcone is right on top of him. So the initial contact is because he's surprised how close Falcone is, and he's trying to get his arms out to start running. You pump your arms when you run. And then
you run like this.
Hit to the face is because he's reacting as he falls back, and your arms go out, and Falcone's face happens to be there. That's the call.
It's so obviously a red card. I will add, by the way, I don't know, because there's a lot of highlight packages that are done by robots, which is stupid and frustrating to me to begin with. The CONCACAF highlights that they put out were awful. Like the Ordaz, because I was rewatching him this morning, the Ordaz goal, the replay goes back to a touch before the goal. It's oh, sick. I wonder how he got the ball just magically in his position and shot. And guess what? They scrubbed the what should have been a red card. A pivotal talking point from this game was not in. So if you're on the East Coast and didn't watch that game, and just was let me go check the highlights, you'd have no idea what we're talking about right now. Fox Sports clipped it and put it on social media. So if you haven't seen it, go look at it. That is a clear red card. And they went to the monitor, and still O'Shea Nation said, "You're trying to question my call? Get out of here." He probably gave a card to the VAR person. How dare you bring me over to the monitor? I saw it. And two, you know how Ordaz knew that he was guilty? Stop. He gave a thumbs up when he got the yellow card. He was oh, sweet. All right, I agree with that. Are you kidding me?
He came over with the yellow card, and Ordaz was great call. Come on, bring it here. Bring it here. You got one
keep it moving.
Yeah. First of all, clearly the AI aggregator is O'Shea Nation Hive, so shout out to my soldiers in arms. Let me give you just a little live stuff from the chat here. Christopher said Sideshow Bob was all over him. Falcone was the aggressor there. Tom's big wrong. Alejandro says that was not a red. Falcone was trying to win an Oscar. Lowell Thompson, not a red card. Falcone just played it up terribly. Barely brushed his chin. Falcone grabs his nose. Alexander says Falcone is already on his way down before the contact. Let's go! Democracy lives.
This is just Miami hate. It's you.
Democracy lives. The other thing we were doing when we were doing the pregame as we were getting ready for this was we both just go, Falcone's a dude. That guy's a dude.
Yeah.
He's got heavy dude energy. There was a moment in the Philly game, I don't remember who it was with, where he was grabbing an attacker and messing with him, and then they both looked at each other and they smiled and they hugged each other and then continued doing it. And it was you can't be mad at him for too long. He is okay. I'm stoked it wasn't a red card because I do actually think there is some he's in his face. It's an awkward moment. Yeah, Nathan Ordaz probably shouldn't do that. And the fact that he ends up scoring the only goal in this game is not a great moment for CONCACAF for this to just be seared into their minds.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
And in their memory. And Inter Miami has every reason to be upset and frustrated about this because that one is a red card 51% of the time or 49% of the time, whatever it is. There was a heavy shot that it was going to be called a red card. Falcone, though, is clearly an upgrade at center back to everything they've had.
Yes, he
Lujan as well. There is so much more quality across that back line, which allows the Jordi Albas of the world to play more freely. Yannick Bright had another good game, I thought, as well, alongside Busquets. Ustari had this moment where he came 25 yards off his line and headed a ball away under pressure. He looked like a center back stepping in to head a ball away. And then what? You think he should have done better on the goal?
Yeah, when a rolling shot gets by you from 24 yards out, probably. Yeah, if it takes a couple skips, you're skipping rocks, in the pond, in the river. I don't know, outdoors guy, no big deal. If it looks like that and it's dribbling towards the goal, again, I really liked how Nathan Ordaz played in this game. Beyond the goal, I thought he was very dangerous.
To dude status, punch a guy in the face, stay on the field.
But I think he was already. He already had dude status for us. So it was cool to see. there was a bit of a conundrum. Abobasi is injured. He's clearly first choice over Giroud. Giroud is just getting back from injury. He was an unused sub on the bench. I don't even think that's a talking point. Like, you're gonna bring him in when you're up 1-0 in this kind of game state for like what he's shown so far too. Like, that was the correct decision to leave him on the bench. And again, with Ordaz, his movement, his fluidity, his pressing, everything he gave you outside of the goal, which was obviously the most important part. I thought he was very good and fit very well in this game. I forget, was it him? We're talking about Falcone as well. If he cleared a ball off the line, I completely am blanking on who shot it. But like, so that goes to show like that. This could have been worse.
On the shot, I can't remember who shot it, but yeah, it was Falcone.
Yeah, but that was another very important
save. Yeah,
a very important moment in this game, in this series, to keep it at a 1-goal deficit. And even I think the more important point was LAFC keep a clean sheet, because away goals is still the tiebreaker in this competition. And going to Miami, knowing if you get one, that a 2-1 loss gets you through.
Tillman, it was with the shot, by the way.
Yes,
so
that's
thank
right.
you for the correction. The game states now in game 2 match up exactly what LAFC wants. You talked about talking to the LAFC club and like their thought process of how this plays out. It's not that it's going to be drastically different than any Inter Miami game, but Inter Miami has to play that way now. There's no world in which they can go into the second leg. Let's say they're up 2-1 and be like, all right, we're gonna rotate some of the pieces and we're gonna play a little bit behind the ball, or we're gonna keep our possession a little safer. It's like Inter Miami's going to go out. They're going to push numbers forward. They're going to try to attack. I think for LAFC, your hope would be that whether it's finding Bouanga in the final third or Bouanga's individual ability in the open field has to be a little bit better. He had a number of chances in this where he tried to take a player 1v1 in open space that we have seen him be successful at in the past, where he could not get by this game, whether it was the touch, whether it was the direction, whether it was the body positioning of the defender. And then I felt like he started to pass off a little bit quicker to try and get into the final third and get the ball back. And LAFC was not focusing to get it back to him in that final third. So they'd progress play, and then it'd be like Bouanga would come in field and Ordaz would play it to Hollingshead coming in from the left back spot. It's like, no, give it back to Bouanga and let him be the threat, because these are the games he's going to feast on. I don't see a world that LAFC gets through and Bouanga doesn't score in the second leg. Just the way it's going to play out and how he has elevated individually in some of the biggest moments. There are not a lot of other guys who are stepping up to those moments. I thought David Martinez has been a little bit underwhelming so far this year. It was a player that I was just really excited to see, and he hasn't gotten his full chances. Under coming in has hurt that. I thought Under was pretty good, but he more drops in and wants to play over the top for Bouanga. And that's where you need that Dennis Bouanga goal if you're going to get through.
Yeah, I think so, but I think that like LAFC, how many times in a big game have they gotten it on a set piece, right? Like, so I don't think it's as binary as that of like, well, if Bouanga doesn't score, then they have no chance. Like, yeah, he's going to be very, very important, but they have other ways to get goals. And then, like you said, with David Martinez's unpredictability in transition, if he comes on in the game, like you can find a goal there. Cengiz Under, like we're still waiting to see the best from him, and I think we're going to. Though the clock is ticking on him because he's almost definitely not going to be here through after the summer. So usually we give players time, and we should, but it's like, oh well, the shelf life on Cengiz Under at LAFC
on a 5-month limited loan is 6 weeks.
Can I just say, you've got people misspelling Falcone's name in the chat because you keep on saying Falcone. You even got me to say it wrong, and now people are spelling it with an E.
Dude, no one knows what's the truth. Like, what really is the truth? Did Falcone throw his face into Nathan Ordaz's hand? Is that a red card for throwing faces? People are asking questions. I'm not really sure.
Sorry, we have a 10th unanswered text from Weeby.
I have my phone on Do Not Disturb.
So good.
And any chat Weeby's in is immediately put on the
But it's a special chat of just the three of us. This isn't Partners in Soccer. He created it to give running
commentary. He created another one. That's good to know. The other MLS team to play Tuesday night, the LA Galaxy 0-0 draw against Tigres at home. Obviously not the worst result against a dangerous Tigres team. Payne still got the start, which was huge, I think, for this Galaxy team. I thought they played at least, it felt a little bit more cutting and less continuous possession side to side. And I thought Peck looked a little bit better because of that in this game as well. But obviously they're up against it now. Like, you're going to Tigres, you need a result. There are very few teams in the world that have ever gone there and gotten a result. the Galaxy are not really set up for it. Yoshida ends up coming off. I
Yeah.
haven't seen an update on his injury, but that's obviously huge. He's your captain and one of your stabilizers along the back line. So it feels like it's against, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it feels like it's against the Galaxy. Overall, I think you come out of this week saying like things have looked better, but you are not clearly back to what you were hoping to be.
No, and it's going to take a little bit of time. Like, my entire analysis of this team, like not worrying about the early start of the season, is that like, hey, when Paintsil's back and you kind of get a little bit of a rhythm, like again, even not waiting until Ricky Pooch, like that's another level. But I think this team will be fine once, and again, you saw it, I think, in the first half, what the difference that Paintsil makes. It's not going to be like, even if that had already happened, I would not be picking them to go to Tigres and get a result, right? Like the way that you spin this, though, is the positive where you try to keep the momentum or you try to keep optimism, and you're longer. Hey, like we clean sheet, so we can get, if we get an away goal, it makes it difficult for them. They're very unlikely, I would say, to get through just because of how good the Tigres team is. This Galaxy team being in flux, if you can get maybe closer to 90 minutes for Payne, so that might be a little bit too much to ask, but he was able to go 45 in this one, so that gives you a chance, because then you have Peck and Payne still as kind of wild cards that, hey, even if you're getting outplayed, even if Tigres is dominating the ball, which I'm going to expect them to do, you still have these two special individual talents that, hey, maybe you can get one in transition, and maybe Tigres is missing some chances, and maybe this, maybe that, but the entire analysis, the entire game plan, the entire hope is if this, if that, it's just, but Occam's razor shaves that right off, and Tigres would be very, very favored to get through.
So the Galaxy play Saturday at 4:30 at Salt Lake, and then they're at Tigres next Tuesday. So it's not like the easiest of schedule. I guess in theory, you get a little altitude training in Salt Lake for you as you go there, but that's not exactly what you'd want to see. And then again, Wednesday, we've got Inter Miami hosting LAFC. That's the early game at 8 p.m. And then Pumas hosting Vancouver. That's the late game. Cruz Azul Club America was 0-0 in that first leg as well. That's the other quarterfinal setup. So the way it will work is the winner of the Vancouver Pumas, the Wednesday games, will play each other. So if Vancouver is able to get through, you will have an all MLS semifinal on one side of things in CCC, and then on the other side, you will guarantee either Cruz Azul or Club America into the semifinal. And then if Tigres knocks off Galaxy, it's an all Liga MX semifinal. If not, you would have the LA Galaxy facing off against two of the giants from Mexico City. Either way, this is fun. This is like one of the reasons, as a neutral from the outside, you wanted the Galaxy to be good for such a long time. They basically have no CONCACAF history. There was the one time like David Beckham played Cholos, and otherwise the Galaxy have been bad so often that they just never qualified for this. And you have like this incredible crossover. I think Club America claimed that they had 19 million global fans, and like half of them were in Southern California. This came out with the whole like they're going to play LAFC in this one game thing. Where would it be played? What would it mean? All that stuff. And it's like, you want these games. Remember when Colorado played Club America at whatever it's called now? I can't even remember.
Park.
Last year in Leagues Cup, and it was like an epic atmosphere. So it would be really cool to see that be the matchup. Either way, I think it's going to be really, really fun in the set of second legs. Let's go over to US Open Cup, where I believe the draw is happening live right now, but I'm not really sure. And let's talk a little bit of flags. You ready to talk flags?
Cooper flag?
No, not that flag.
Okay.
By the way, I love all the college basketball people being like, it's the best Final Four ever. It's the best teams we've ever seen. It's like, oh, do you like really good college basketball teams? I got a product for you, buddy, and it's called the NBA. We had some games that we were really looking forward to, and almost all of them delivered in U.S. Open Cup, starting with the Chattanooga Derby. Chattanooga Red Wolves of USL League One against what is now Chattanooga FC of MLS Next Pro. The story, for anyone who doesn't remember or know, Chattanooga FC came on the scene as an NPSL squad, I think originally. They were semi-pro, fully fan-run and funded, and they were blowing out attendances back in 2015 and 16 and 17. 10, 15,000 fans a game for the few games they would have every year. It was like one of the great first big stories of, okay, you can build a club your own outside of the $500 million structure of like buying into an MLS team or even a full USL championship team. my understanding is the way it went down was then USL asked if they wanted to join the professional ranks. The vote from the community owners was no. And then one of the owners, who was a successful businessman, took the rights and then went and started a new Chattanooga team. And they called them the Chattanooga Red Wolves. So now you have two teams in Chattanooga, and eventually now, I hope I'm saying Chattanooga correctly, like the way locals do, but it's feeling like it's getting worse and worse as this thing goes along. Now Chattanooga FC eventually elevated themselves from semi-pro into fully pro, playing as one of the few independent teams in MLS Next Pro, because they can't join USL because there's already this Chattanooga Red Wolves team, which took this spot that everyone kind of said we're not ready for and don't want. That is the setting for these two teams to face off in this US Open Cup second round. It was 12,000 fans on a Wednesday night. Like, you don't get that
unbelievable
anywhere in the world, pretty much, just because it's hard to get out to games. There's so much going on in people's lives. It's the fourth largest crowd in Chattanooga FC history. It is the second largest crowd for a US Open Cup second round match, behind FC Cincinnati at Nippert Stadium back in 2017 against AFC Cleveland. That was the magnitude of this game. And I couldn't really tell because of the camera angle, but it seemed like there was a section of Chattanooga Red Wolves supporters below the camera on the left side of the field. And then it was just blue everywhere else. Eventually, this game at 1-1 goes to PKs. Everyone runs behind the goal, which is like the best part of US Open Cup.
Oh my God, yeah.
Game in Portland,
oh my God,
as well.
Yeah.
I love it. And the Red Wolves end up sneaking out with a penalty kick victory. I don't know, 5-3 or whatever it was, 4-3 in the end. And so heartbreak for Chattanooga FC. Then after that, I'd already turned off because I had 97 other screens going on. One of the Chattanooga Red Wolves player tried to plant a Red Wolves flag at midfield. And Chattanooga FC was like, as if, buddy, get off my field. That causes a fight, not a full-on brawl, just pushing and pulling and all of that. And
he gave up really quickly. He gave up really quickly on the flag plant.
I think a lot of his teammates were like,
like, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
A couple half-hearted shoves of like, yeah, I have to defend you, but like, what are we doing?
The one person on Chattanooga FC, I couldn't see who it was because there's no jersey out. It was just
a bib.
Yeah. Committed to the cause. Knew what was going on, fully locked in, and was not going to give up and was not going to get back down. This game was awesome. Like, it had so much energy to it. And that's how it felt a lot of these games. Like, this is the point of this competition. You had cup set potential because you had more pro teams come in. So you had some amateur teams and some huge moments, lower division versus higher division. Like, this was a really good US Open Cup week.
I totally agree. I'm going to bring it back to the flag planting thing. Because, like, dude, you saw a video of Ohio State versus Michigan, and you thought it was dope. Like, can't we just, like, find a new angle, find a new bit? Hopefully you don't get pepper sprayed the next time. And it's just, like, one of those things that goes, like, oh, I'm going to plant flag. And it's, like, the other teams are like, what? Like, we can't let you do that. But, like, it's just seems half-hearted, seems performative. And, I don't know. I think I'm over that pretty quickly already. But yeah, it was like Portland Hearts of Pines. Like, that was an awesome atmosphere, game ending, everything else that came with it. El Farolito. Few things get me juiced more than like somebody on the sideline having a burrito. Like, Fabian Rankel was at that game, and he put up a picture on Instagram of just like, during the game, just having a burrito. I was like, oh, that's sick. I'm really jealous of that. That's pretty cool. Just like little things like that. And the story behind them, like the joke's like, yeah, it's a burrito store. It's a burrito shop that are progressing again. Second year in a row that they are the amateur team that is the furthest progressing. And that's a thing that is tracked by U.S. Soccer. You get a little bonus money for being the amateur team that goes the longest. So that was all really cool. We're going to get into, I'm sure, Des Moines.
$50,000.
That's good money, man.
Yeah, it was last year was 25. So it's already
get a lot
doubled.
of burritos.
There's been a lot. Yeah, you could get a lot of burritos. There's been a lot more money put.
Now I want burritos for lunch. We got to wrap this up so I can go get food.
Watch out, Chipotle in New Jersey, because you got a Tom Boger hurtling your way.
Bad day to be Chipotle. I'll say that much right now. And then like Union Omaha and Des Moines, like that. It was sad to see our guy Bradley Ray Phillips substituted early in the first half. I'm assuming that was a muscle injury rather than I'm tired, I don't want to be here. Yeah. So I hope that Brad's all good. Sasha Kleshin substituted either at halftime or early in the second half, and then gets a red card from the bench. I know Sasha's my guy, so I'm going to sound like a homer here, and I don't even care if I do. Watching the grainy video of what I've seen, I still haven't talked to Sasha about it because I figured he got 100 texts. But he didn't do much. It seemed like the other guy was the instigator, and then the ref did the thing where he goes, I don't know, man, both of you guys are off.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, justice for Sasha Question. And I hope that he's sitting there thinking, I don't want my retirement Open Cup run to end like this. I need to come out of retirement again next year.
Well,
but then he would miss the first round.
He's suspended now.
Yeah. Or so the other side of that is legacy of, you know how Clint Dempsey was on like the list of suspended players for like 15 years after he retired?
He might still
maybe that's Sasha's legacy. You just leave that one game.
Was still on like 2 or 3 years ago. We're talking like 09, 10 that he would have played in it, got his red card, then got a suspension. I don't remember what it was for. Clint Dempsey's obviously for tearing up the notebook. And then when those 14, 15 game suspensions happen, the teams don't play that often in this. So if you lose after 2 games, that rolls over to the next year, and it has to come out in the match report because clearly you cannot assume anyone's done when it comes to US Open Cup. Like if you've got people who are suspended, if Peter Vermees is still suspended from 1998 for playing in the US Open Cup, you got to assume
he can give you 10
have
months
the
off the bench.
Potential to come back and play because of what we've seen from Des Moines. Tommy Thompson and Moise Hernandez added to the crew. Was stoked about that. Shout out to Tommy. I believe Weeby's still on the Tommy hype train, thinking he might be the homegrown breakthrough for the San Jose Earthquake. So when he hears that, he can enjoy that as well. The thing I didn't understand, so the Portland game, epic, unreal. Portland versus Hartford, so a little New England love, although it takes like 12 hours to get between the two of them. You have a Hartford team that has struggled at times early in their USL Championship time.
Yeah.
So this is not like a great game for them to lose. And you have Portland now, as we said, they debuted in US Open Cup. They played in Naples in USL League One. I think it was their first game. It was like massive away crowd. They lost. Now they come back home. I didn't turn the game on until it was already dark out. So when they showed the highlights at the end of regulation, and you could see the high school all around it. Like, you couldn't see that at night. At night, it was, like, kind of epic because you're like, it's a great crowd. It's lit up. Like, yeah, the football field, not ideal. Then they show from the early moments, and you're like, oh, look, there's where you do the shot put. And, like, there's the buses and all of that stuff. And you're like, this is a hilarious setup. I don't know why the ref made – the fans weren't allowed to be behind the goal directly. And I don't get that because there are stands behind goals. So it was like something about them being at the fence line. I don't know what it was. So then they had to have the coach come down and wave everyone wide so that they could get spread out. But you ended up 0-0 into extra time. Red card for Portland. Hartford scores, and then Portland equalizes down a man and then wins it in the shootout. And, like, I love a celebration in a moment like this where you don't know what to do with yourself. And the guy who shot it, can't remember who it was, like runs to the left side, then runs to the right side, then runs to the goalie. It was like, I got to celebrate with everyone at the same time. It was awesome to watch. Had like 87 screens going on. As you said, El Farolito, they make the money. They beat Monterey Bay, who are number 2 in the USL Championship, Western Conference. Like, this is a real victory for El Farolito to go on the road. So the draw's happening right now, as I said. What my understanding is that, so now you've got the rest of the USL Championship teams entering at this stage, and then the MLS teams entering at the following stage. The top 8 USL Championship teams entering at this stage are all dedicated as hosts for this round. And then the bottom 8 all will have to travel to whoever they draw from the teams coming in. So you already have a little bit of a setup of like who's going to be where. So the Charlestons, the Sacramentos, the Louisvilles of the world will all host. Guaranteed traveling like Pittsburgh, Phoenix, Rhode Island, all these other teams who finished lower in the standings last year but high enough to qualify into this round, because you had teams like Miami FC enter 2 rounds ago, and then a bunch of other teams enter this round from the USL Championship. Why I'm saying all this, I have zero idea, but I knew it, and it was in my head, and now you all know it, and that's where we go from here. Let's jump into a little MLS, and I'm going to go watch the draw live while you talk. Tom, you've got a couple scoops for us. The ice cream shop is open. Do I have my graphic? Hang on. Let's go.
Dust it off.
Look at us, back in the building.
Yeah, so this has usually been the cadence. Again, maybe this is just anecdotal, and I don't have any data to run through to back it up. But from my experience, it's usually teams are still crushing signings and trying to get them done in February, and then March is like a lull where teams are just like, all right, we just got over the line right before opening day or around opening day. Guys are coming in, and then we get to like the beginning of April, and the teams that have 5-6 games that are like, oh crap, like we need to do something now. And then maybe the trade market opens up. I'm still expecting the trade market to come through. So I think that was part of the timing where a couple signings happened. First, Toronto FC have signed Swiss midfielder Maxime Dominguez on loan from Vasco da Gama. He is a technical, creative attacking midfielder. Before he went to Brazil, he was in Portugal. And his last 2 seasons in Portugal, he had 10-plus goal contributions in each of those seasons. So this is a guy that they want to get more goals and assists out of the midfield. And he's somebody who they think they can. He was able to leave Vasco because I think there was a coaching change. Playing time didn't come exactly how he hoped after the coaching change. And he wants to go somewhere where he can play. So that's how this one happened. They feel he's motivated and hopefully he could be a long-term fit. But it's a loan to begin with, and Toronto gets in just another piece. And the most important part for this Toronto team right now is adding dudes and pieces that feel long-term-ish or potentially could be long-term.
Yeah, they just need to be able to like have some control of games and then turn that control into some level of danger. And all of that doesn't exist right now. Central midfield's a clear place for them to try and upgrade, but so is center forward. Theo Corbino was the big piece they added. Has not played the last 2 games. Got 1 start, I think, this whole season, and you're already.
Well, Bryn Hildenson was the big addition.
Fine. How'd that go?
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying.
Yeah. None of it has gone really well. TFC heads to Miami Sunday night. That's the Sunday night soccer game, so you can watch Weeby. I don't know, wear another cowboy hat or something. I'm just going to continue with that joke until it doesn't happen.
But he's going to find an armadillo.
Yeah. I guess it'll probably be Gator.
Are you going to hang out with Weeby when he's in your city?
Oh, I didn't realize that. I hadn't put 2 and 2 together. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if he checks in. Some people don't check in. You never know.
Wow, they don't ask you for permission before coming to Miami.
Exactly. I don't have to sign off on everyone.
First you text Uncle Luke, and then you text David Goss.
What?
Luther Campbell.
I don't know what's happening.
Uncle, grow up.
Okay.
Grow up.
Other move. Colorado making another signing.
Yeah, Colorado Rapids finalizing a deal for U.S. Youth International winger Bryce Jamison from Orange County. Jamison traveled to Denver this week to do his medical and complete the deal. He'll remain on loan with Orange County for the rest of the season and then join the Rapids for preseason ahead of the 2026 season. This is a 19-year-old. He's got a lot of talent. He's already got, I think, like 70 appearances for Orange County in his young career. He came through the Barca Academy. I believe he spent some time with Atlanta. But this is a guy who was at the U17 World Cup. He's had talent. There have been teams in MLS and Europe that have been interested. I know that the Rapids have been a long-time admirer of him, even dating back to like last season. They were looking into maybe bringing him in for the beginning of 25. But now the deal gets done, and Orange County is one of the teams in USL that are the leaders in developing players and selling them. Kobe Henry came through there, and Ronaldo Demu.
Brian Ko.
And then Milan Iloski, who's signed with San Diego this week.
Boom. And now we're full circle. This is clearly a committed part of Colorado's plan, which is to spend some money, which they think will recoup in value as it goes along. Mm-hmm. They've done it for players a little bit older, like the Teddy Kuti Pietros of the world, like the Austin Trustees of the world, which worked out. Even if you talk about, Georgi Mihailovic is a different conversation, but like, this is a clear motive for them. I think for Orange County, we had Dan Rootstein, the president of the club, on this show in December talking about what they want to be and what they want to build. They consistently talk about sell-ons. They know that not everyone's coming to Orange County to drop $20 million, but they think these players have the quality. And so they think that they give them a good platform, and their goal is to sell them into the right situation for them to then continue on. That's how the club makes the big number. Colorado are a committed selling club. They are committed to playing young players, and they're committed to selling. And so this connection makes a lot of sense, and it's one that I wouldn't be shocked if we see more going forward, because Colorado, as much as they're committed to this whole process, are not the highest spending academy team. They would argue they're not in the best soccer atmosphere, which is weird to me because half the women's national team is from Denver. So like, feels like people play soccer in this area, and we've seen Sam Vineses and all this, like we've seen good talent come out of there, but this is another way to try and supplement some of the work you're doing. So it makes a lot of sense. And as you said, there's a player with a really high pedigree already that a lot of people are a fan of. And that takes us into San Diego, which is the other move you just mentioned.
Yeah, Milan Iloski. He comes in from FC Nordsjælland, which is obviously part of the ownership group, the Right to Dream, the Mansour group that or they're getting him on loan because they need a forward right now. With a couple injuries, they've had Oni Valakari playing as a false nine. Milan Iloski, his numbers with Orange County were crazy. Yeah. It was like 40 goals and 15 assists or something to that effect over 2 seasons. He absolutely crushed it there. Went to Northland. Playing time hasn't been easy to come by, but this is an MLS level player, and I think this is a good signing, and I'm excited for Iloski to get another chance at MLS. He came through Real Salt Lake. He was, again, like, he killed it for the Monarchs, wasn't getting opportunities with the first team. It was one of those where it's like, all right, he's too good for our second team, but I don't know if we can totally rely on the first team yet. So then he went to Orange County, and then to Europe, and now back with San Diego, and they know him, obviously, being in the group. He'll know the style. He'll know, kind of just generally speaking. Shouldn't be too difficult for him to adapt and hit the ground running and being able to play. And if he performs well early, he's going to get a lot of minutes. So I'm excited to see how this goes for Milan Iloski.
If you had asked me, I actually, when he signed with Northland, I just assumed that this was going to happen, and I forgot that it never happened. Like, I remember when he signed with Northland, it was like, he's basically signing with San Diego FC. But they don't have a team yet, so they have this team. And then I didn't actually notice that he never actually came over to play on the team. And so now it's happening, and it makes a ton of sense. As you said, he was one of the guys pushing through. Lower divisions, UCLA as well, was really impressive. And I think San Diego has shown that if you fit their style, you can be successful, similar to what we talked about with Vancouver and we talked about with Columbus, of like, their style is able to accentuate the good parts of these players' games. San Diego plays Seattle on Saturday night, which is an interesting matchup in this one. Obviously, Seattle's struggling a little bit. They bring Kent in. They're hoping that helps stabilize them. A tough one this weekend already for Seattle. The previous weekend, San Diego coming off the high of the LAFC win, but like hurting. And this gives you one more reinforcement, but they're still behind the 8 ball. I think it'll be interesting to see if Chucky Lozano gets a start. And if he does, is that an option as a false nine? Is that one of the ways you want to use him? Does that take him out of position and hurt your team even more? I'm not sure. I don't know what the answers are for that, but the San Diego team's must watch right now. And I think this is another really cool matchup where first 4 weeks, there were people in the world saying like, oh, play someone good. And it's like, they played LAFC. Now they play Seattle. There isn't really much else you can do in the Western Conference right now outside of like playing a Minnesota to prove that you are very, very good. And so this is another big game for them.
I totally agree. And yeah, just on those little things, like I'd rather have, even if you have to play a false nine, I'd still rather Chucky if he's able to start playing the wing because he gives you the verticality. And then you have, like, again, I thought Oni Valakari was very good on the weekend. And the way that he kind of combined and made the game, didn't clutter space. Because usually, like, the way that a false nine goes wrong is when you're 9 and you're 10, or, maybe an inverted winger, then they're all in the same spot and it gets too clamped. And I thought that they did a good job at moving the ball and keep changing out the spaces.
Yeah. Some other big games this weekend. We have Philadelphia versus Orlando.
Very excited for this one.
Joe Larry, the legend, at Backheeled, did an interview with Ernst which we
Please go read it.
Very entertaining. So go read that at Backheeled, and you should subscribe to Backheeled as I do, and then you get all the emails and you get to read all these great articles. John Morrissey again crushes it. Had a U.S. Open Cup recap that you can go read. There's power rankings, everything else in there. You threw a couple of quotes in the show rundown. Do you want to do a narrative reading?
So Joe Lowry did this as a Q&A, so there was pretty unfiltered Ernst Tanner in his own words. And for those who don't know a ton about Ernst Tanner as a person, as an interviewee, if you ask him a good question, he's going to be honest. He's at the stage of his life, his career, where he just, like, that's how he does it. So if you ask a good question, and Joe asks a lot of good questions, you're going to get some good answers. So the biggest one that's going to come out of this is him discussing the change to part ways with Jim Curtin and then bringing Bradley Carnell. And on Jim Curtin, quote, "We made the change and it turned out to be the right thing. People see it now. Now we have to go and work." So 6 games into the season, it's, yes, this club legend that we fired and in a very, very unpopular decision, taking a victory lap. That might be a little bit difficult to, this could be a very funny quote in a month if things aren't going well. But again, he is very committed and very confident in what they're doing. The other one on this too, that some of it feels a little unfair, but I'll just read it. Quote, he wanted to take back the quote for a second. A lot of the tenor of this was, hey, we were kind of getting stale, and then when you have the same person evaluating players, right, like, this is good to refresh and for everybody. And so, quote, you see that some of the players who are not really rated get a different evaluation. What never happened is that Macania would have played, and now everybody can see he's a good player. I don't think that Frankie Westfield would have gotten that chance. Ty Baribo was neglected for roughly 10 months because there were other players here. These are just examples, but we needed to make a change to freshen the situation up. I'll quickly say that Macania, I actually don't even remember exactly when they signed him, but you had Glesnes and you had Elliott, so that makes sense there.
And Damian Lowe, which could be the frustration, but yeah.
And Frankie Westfield was not in the first team last year.
Yeah. So. And this guy, Julian Carranza, played for Philadelphia for some of those 10 months that Ty Baribo and Mikel Ura also played for Philadelphia. But I think, it's fair to take his victory lap now. There was huge question marks about the roster construction. He made the decision that the roster was good enough and that it was the direction and feel under Jim Curtin. And he says in this interview, sometimes after a little while, you need a change. Things don't feel as fresh anymore. Things get stale. Players get used to it, whatever it is. We've said a million times on this show, you can't fire every player. So when things like that happen, the coach is going to be the casualty. It's what we're seeing in Sporting Kansas City right now, because you're hoping that you can restart things where, from your point of view, you think you've brought the talent in that can cover a lot of these positions. He's been pretty honest about they got a little lucky in the first game.
It's been funny.
Played well in the second game, fortunate matchup, and then they were rolling from there. Obviously, we saw them lose to Inter Miami, and I think you saw a little bit of the lack of true attacking third elite quality that can get you over the hump in matches like that. But they were right there. Even if it ends 2-0, they were right there with Inter Miami. And so I think the feeling that they're back should be there inside this Philadelphia group. And I think Ernst is scoring a couple points over here on the East Coast with just calling West Coast people soft.
So Joe asked a question. It was pretty much just hey, what built-in advantages do you have for your academy? Again, the methodology is great, the infrastructure is great, right? But do you have any built-in advantages being in this region of the talent that you gave it to pull from? Quote, I'm hearing people, even in our environment, saying that people from the West Coast are too soft. There might be something to that. Philadelphia is a tough but honest community. Things are a little bit more direct, a little less friendly. People are very realistic. They deal with everyday life. They deal with difficulties. They obviously have the ability to overcome adversity. West Coast, soft.
Spoken like a true Philly man. Ernst, born and bred. He's a SEPTA guy through and through, and he wants to stand up for his people. Makes no sense, one, because Philadelphia Union just recruit from all over. So, a quarter of the players come from the West Coast and wherever else. But I'm never going to disrespect it as an East Coaster myself.
It's more of a vibe than a where you're from, right? Sacha Kljestan, I like to joke too about he, particularly when he was with the Red Bulls, he had that bite to him. He's a Southern California kid, but then he spent a year at Seton Hall University in New Jersey, and then he was with the Red Bulls, and so I claim that as oh yeah, it's a Jersey guy. So it's more of a vibe than exactly where you're from.
Got it. It's an R or R. If you say R like a Long Island.
Are you a pirate, pal?
Yeah, I'm just.
What's up, dude?
I'm just a Long Islander. In all of that. We do have the comments from the chat of Bradley Cornell's first job started pretty well too and didn't end as well, which is a very good point. And Philly started well in 2024 as well, and then it sort of fell off. Although, as we said a million times, Philadelphia's underlying numbers were the least lucky team of all time, so maybe some of that is just the energy and vibe around the group because it had gotten stale. And if you take that away, then I would assume at a minimum this team's good enough to make the playoffs. They're probably in a position where they will be a guaranteed playoff team this year, not a play-in team. Mm-hmm. And you're competing for a home playoff game, which is a pretty big jump from last year. And I think would be acceptable to most people around Philadelphia to say all right, this is the start of a newer build. This is where we stand right now. That would be a pretty good start to all of that. So another big weekend. They face off against Orlando. Obviously, they played in the first game of the season, so it's weird to see them play already once again. That game was crazy wide open. I would expect something similar. Orlando's attack is humming right now. Pasalic looks awesome alongside Ojeda. Ojeda's doing the things he does at his best, and Luis Muriel looks good, and so it's really hard to decide where you're going to put resources along the back line, who you're going to double in. Pasalic comes inside, Muriel spins off the last center back, Ojeda's alongside him, and you got to decide where are you going to step, where are you trying to close down, and they're able to kill you from a lot of those different positions, but they are a mess at center back. So that means goals, which is going to be the one of the games that I am definitely tuned in for this weekend.
Yeah, I'm completely there. And one other note on Orlando, it occurred to me this week that head coach Oscar Breja, sporting director Luis Muzzi, and technical director Ricardo Moreira are once again out of contract after this season with no option for 26. So that's going to be something to watch, because I'll tell you, if those three hit the market, there would be plenty of offers. I don't think or know if they'd be a package. I'm just saying I think that they would be in hot commodities. And when we're talking about Montreal and Kansas City, there's going to be more teams that fire the coaches. Maybe there's going to be front office changes as well. That's something to watch, because what was it, 2 years ago they all kind of aligned their deals when they were hitting the situation. So I think that's a curious one.
So schedule for this weekend for anyone waiting for their MLS setup. You've got Charlotte-Nashville as the 2:30 game on Saturday. That's a game I'm really excited about. I've liked this Nashville team. They bumped up against FC Cincinnati. We're not able to break through. Hani needs goals. Charlotte, also a team that have oscillated between great and good this year. Salt Lake RSL, LA Galaxy, as I said, is that 4:30 game on Saturday. Those are the standalones. Then you get into the full slate of Saturday night games. Just lone one late night game. That's that San Diego-Seattle game. So a lot of games in the Central Time Zone. Vancouver hosting Colorado in there as well. And then on Sunday, 3 separate matches. So NYCFC hosting Minnesota at Yankee Stadium at 3 p.m. Then San Jose hosting DC, and it closes out with Miami against Toronto. And then we'll be back here on Soccerwise. I'll have your weekend recap show for you. No NWSL this weekend, but it will be, of course, coverage of the U.S. women's national team friendly in the gold medal rematch against Brazil, which is going to be happening at SoFi, and then the second game at PayPal Park. We're going to have an interview with Tampa Rowdies next week, and we're looking forward to. We have, of course, USOC coverage. We got the draw as well, so a lot of exciting games there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you to all of you for joining us live today. Thank you to all of you for listening to the podcast. Once again, you can get into our Patreon, get to access to our Discord. You can rate us and review us anywhere you listen to help other people find the show. We'll talk to you all again very, very soon.